Hey everyone, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Yeah, it's 8 p.m. in Poland. It's like 0 degrees Celsius, which is, I don't know, about 6 feet, 2 inches in Fahrenheit. Uh, yeah, you figure that out. I have no idea what temperatures are in Fahrenheit, but yeah, it's cold, but it's been a good day. So yeah, hope you guys are well. So today we're going to be talking about our favorite subject, Islam. And today I want to do a bit of a live stream, give you guys a chance to ask me questions. But first, sound check. Audio's coming through. Just for those in the chat, let me know if the audio is coming through all right. Radio. Okay, it looks like my audio is coming through. Awesome stuff. Um, yeah. As I said, when you convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit, you've got to convert somehow numbers to feet and inches, and that doesn't work. Americans need to get on board with the metric system, right? If yeah. Anyway, awesome stuff. Thanks, guys. Um, Okay, yeah, so today, ask questions. We're going to talk about the Sharia. Now, I do have stuff planned. So I've got a bit of a syllabus to work through here, and I don't expect to get through all of it, but it's a guide for what we can talk about so that I start to introduce the Sharia, where you need to look, what Islam really says about things, because we learned Islam from Muslims who don't want to give us the truth. They don't want us to know. And in fact, in many cases, they themselves don't know. Don't forget Newton's meters per second squared. Yeah. How many degrees is that in Celsius? That's a very good question. Okay. I mean, in South Africa, where we grew up, as you know, I attended a school for emotionally disturbed teachers, as probably did most of you. Hey, Stephen Gilchrist, how's it going? Yeah, as we would say in South Africa, it's this cold. So yeah, it's about that cold outside, but all good. There's warming indoors. At least I have that. Um, Hello, gewoon Franco, gaan met jou? Audio is sahi. That's really good to know. Yeah, I think I solved yesterday's audio issues, and I spent the whole weekend learning how to stream properly, how to do things, and I'm getting better at this. Islam, the religion of rote memorization and rote submission. That is exactly the truth, Erkan. Very, very true. Okay, so tell you what, let's jump in. Because I'd like to have dinner after this, and which I haven't had yet. Also, hey, I've got this hooked up to my tablet. So actually, I click buttons on my tablet, icons on the screen, and the screens change, and it's awesome stuff, just like that. Amazing. I don't have to look at these tiny, tiny letters on the screen because I've got a huge monitor and it's pretty far away from me, actually. So yeah, and you cannot change the font size. Weird stuff. Okay, guys, so let's start from a baseline, right? And in the future, I'm going to do an intro to Islam 101, where we're going to take it from the top and try to define things correctly so that we don't start from a point of confusion. But yeah, also Hope Faith, you said let's party. It's like, yeah, party time. Excellent. That was a good line from back in the day. So let me take away, let me remove that. So yeah, Islam regards itself as a deen, right? We who speak English, we regard Islam as a religion because we see a similarity to Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity. So we assume it's religion. However, Islam doesn't call itself a religion. They use that as a convenience because we do and because it misleads us. Islam calls itself a deen, right? Actually, let me just bring up the screen. So Islam calls itself a deen, right? And a deen, so let's have a look at what a deen actually means. So deen, its meaning and scope. Now, this definition comes from the Lisan al-Arab, the Arab tongue. This was completed by Ibn Manzur in 1290 and it occupied 20 printed book volumes. And it is the most well-known dictionary of the Arabic language as well as one of the most comprehensive. So this is a classical manual, okay? So that's the source that I'm utilizing for this. So in order to offer a deep analysis of the term deen, it is necessary to resort to a detailed linguistic analysis for substantiating each with revealed and other sources. And then they've got blah, blah, blah. So this dictionary suggests four meanings of the term deen. The first meaning is subjugation or dominance. I hope that makes it very clear. We need to understand what Islam is so that we understand what everything that flows from it means how it's meant to be applied, how it is contextualized, how it is understood, how it is applied in a religious, legal, political, social, and military context. Stephen Gilchrist, sorry, I mean, hey, brother, you know what? Autocorrect is trying to, yeah, I was using autocorrect and it says like, autocorrect is changing my spelling and it will usually say something like, nothing's going on, just please ignore these messages. So yeah, autocorrect has a mind of its own, and it seriously it tries to embarrass me on a daily basis. So the first meaning is subjugation or dominance. So understand, so the first meaning of Islam is to subjugate and dominate. Understand that. Then there is administrative or legislative authority. That is legal and political authority. Understand that. It is legal and political authority. It hasn't said anything about religion yet. It has spoken about subjugation or dominance of others and legal authority over them. Then, to put pressure to be obedient or using power to enslave or make one obedient. I haven't yet come across a line that says worship of Allah and being nice to other people because unfortunately that is not present within the definition of deen. So Coco Jasmine, yes, everything in Islam is submission, fear, and terror. So yeah, even technology is da'if. Yeah, well, hey, I'm working on it. So in Arabic, okay, dintuhum fadanu means I subjugated them so they obeyed me. So you will obey. Understand? This is very much what this means. Dintuhu means I ruled or governed upon him. That is a political meaning. That is not religious. This means they have to politically control you. Thus, the word dayan is used to indicate a person who dominates and rules over a state, nation, or tribe. The second meaning is obedience and bondage, subordination and domination by someone and bearing humiliation under subjugation and power of others. You are to be humiliated under this subjugation by the Muslims. Understand this. So this is the formal, official meaning of deen from their most respected classical dictionary of Islam, of Arabic. So as stated, dintum fadanu means I subjugated them, so they obeyed me. So you are to obey them. You are to obey the Muslims. No, there's no place for love in Islam. Coca Jasmine, I see that. The obedient tribe is called Amun Dainum. Here, al-Din does not mean religion. Oh, it does not mean religion, but it means obedience. Listen and obey. The third meaning is rules, regulations, rules upon rules upon rules. If you read the Sharia, it is rules and rules and rules. Regulations, which are obviously legal issues, ideology, doctrine, custom, tradition, or finally we get to religion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The seventh word is religion. Isn't that interesting? And finally, the fourth meaning is reward, repayment, justice, and accountability. Well, that's a topic, that's a deeper topic for another time, but that is not a religious matter, understand? So it may be noted that before Islam, the Arabs had different connotations in using this word, and the use of it in its various derivatives revolved around one or all of the above-mentioned connotations. Thank you very much, Anonymous. I see I've just had a tip. Thank you. I'm actually trying to save $300 to buy a better video editing software package. The one that I had was very good, and I've gotten capable with it, but I have to pay an annual subscription fee. So the other one that I'm hoping to buy, I can pay for it once, and they update it as it updates, and it's a perpetual license. So thank you very much. I saved this, and I bought books with it. There's one on the history of the Christian Church, both Catholic and the Protestant churches and their treatment of the Jews, something I've been quite interested in. So it may be noted that before Islam, the Arabs had different connotations. These connotations were not clear enough to the Arabs, and this word did not get a terminological position in any systematic and recognized school of thought. So the understanding of this word was vague and insubstantial. And then, of course, with the revelation of the Quran, the word received a more definite, more definitive meaning. The Quranic use of the word has four components. Let's look. Sovereignty and supreme authority. That would be political authority. Obedience and submission to that authority, to make you submit. Intellectual and a practical system formed under that authority, so an ideology, and repayment by that authority for loyalty and obedience or rebellion and transgression against it. So they will repay you, in other words, vengeance, right? And you need to understand also that the term jizya means retribution. Jizya is not a tax. Yes, it is a form of tax. It's called a capitation tax. And if you don't pay it, it's a decapitation tax. But jizya is defined in the Sharia as retribution. It is punishment because you are committing shirk. You ascribe partners to Allah. You worship Jesus, in other words. So even though the Quran uses the term connoting various meanings, the term is generally referred to mean a complete code of life. This is political, military, social, religious, everything. It's a complete civilization. KL, thank you very, very much. I really, really appreciate that. Yeah, literally, DHC. Yeah, look, I'm very grateful. You guys have been wonderful, and thank you. So, yeah, so I needed to get that out the way. It's something that we need to understand. So now I'm gonna have to figure out how my tablet works. I take one note away, I bring up this, and I bring up that. Boom, nice. Okay, guys, so this book that I'll be working with is linked in the description. Please download a copy. You're welcome to follow along, or at least afterwards go through the notes, and I can post these notes later in a comment, the ones I'm working with here on the right-hand side. Let me just bring that up. So let me bring this up. Wrong one. And let me bring this up so that I can see it on my screen. Yeah. Hey, is Oz Truth around? Oh, awesome stuff. Hey, man. Hey, thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate it. Yeah. So, guys, so this is some of what I'm going to talk about. So here we are, Reliance of the Traveler. This is the most famous single volume Islamic law manual in the world, what they call sacred law, right? Islamic sacred law, Sharia law, the fiqh. There are differences between them, but for the purposes of our talk, we're just going to keep them, basically just call them fiqh, Sharia, whatever. Sharia is really the word of Allah, the word of Muhammad. These are unchangeable, right? The fiqh is the man-made interpretation of that and the application of that to life, right? Politics, religion, and warfare, and so on. But this book is the primary Sharia manual of the Shafi school of jurisprudence, the largest of which is, of course, the Hanafi school, which uses the Hidayah, right? But jizya, let's see this quick comment about jizya is mafia shaped. Exactly. Dean reminds me of Germans. Yeah, Germany's Reich, the empire, exactly. So let's have a look at this. We need to go to page 2. So now, I want to teach you guys how to work with the Sharia, how to understand it, and you need to know these definitions. I mean, take your time, don't rush, but we need to understand these things. Hey, T, good to see you, man. So, sacred knowledge. So, this is the very first entry. So, the sacred knowledge is important to Islam. Now, understand when they say the knowledge, there's a reference to knowledge in the Quran that comes up very often, and what they mean is the gnosis. That is the context, the connotation that they're using. They don't make it explicit. This is not meant for the lay Muslim. I've mentioned before, there are 4 levels in Islam, right? The Ibara, the Ishara, the Lataif, the Haqaiq, right? The top 2 levels are strictly for the highest echelon of Muslims, of the ulama, the alim, the people of knowledge, right? The mostly those are Sufis. Effectively, those are the Sufis. The second level, sorry, the Ishara, I would probably place Yasir Qadhi in that level, on the upper echelon of that. He's one of the ulama, right? And then, of course, the lay Muslims, the most basic understanding, the plain level of meaning, the literal level of meaning, that's your lay Muslim. And don't forget, we are lower than them, so we are not supposed to know as much as them, and I'll get into that. So the validity of following qualified scholarship. This is actually a very interesting chapter B, because it says that it is compulsory, it is obligatory for lay Muslims to follow the scholars, to follow the ulama, because those people are the inheritors, they are the heirs of Muhammad. They've inherited his authority, and the Quran backs that up, and they provide the evidence for that. Book O is another very interesting book. Book O, Justice. Right, this book here, Justice, very, very interesting, well worth reading to learn at least a basic definition of jihad. Now, the reason Umdat al-Salik is popular, it's a single volume. It is a summary of all of the jurisprudence of Islam. So you probably will find a reference to whatever you're looking for in this book. Typically, these manuals are multiple volumes, thousands of pages. This one was basically a summarized compendium you could carry it with you as a single book. Right. There are others as well, but this one is very highly authoritative, and we'll get into that too. Just checking the comments to make sure I'm not missing anything. Hope Faith, thank you very much. Yeah, and okay, so now here we go. Let's skip forward. Now, there are 4 schools of Sunni Islamic law, right? They call them the Hanafi, the Maliki, the Shafi, and the Hanbali. They're identical in approximately 75% of their legal conclusions. Muslims try to confuse us by saying that, well, no one knows what's going on. That's what they try to imply, that, well, the scholars differ. Of course they differ. right? And they explain it in detail within the Sharia, within the scholarly writings. 75% of the Sharia of Islamic law is identical across the four schools. Only these four schools are legal. The rest are considered illegal, right? So they mentioned that while the variations, the remaining questions are variances within a single family, right? So these are variances. For instance, do we stone you to death? Do we beat you to death with a stick? Do we whip you to death? Do we burn you, drown you, starve you, or strangle you? Understand, those are the variations, right? So now they mention that the variances within a single family of explainers of the Holy Quran and prophetic Sunnah are traceable to methodological differences in understanding or authentication of the primary textual evidence. Differing viewpoints are sometimes reflected even in a single school. Shia has great overlap too. It does. Yeah, I must admit, I haven't studied the Shia very often. Much of their stuff is not yet in English. Much of the meaty stuff, the good stuff, is not quite in English yet, as much as in the Sunni schools. So the present volume, the Umdat al-Salik, represents one of the finest and most reliable short works in Shafi jurisprudence, a school with perhaps fewer scholarly differences on rulings than others. Its main resource is the recension of Imam Nawawi, the great 13th century Shafi scholar and jurisprudent, who upgraded the work of previous generations in terms of the authenticity and application of hadith evidence. Right? So, each school does not merely comprise the work of a single imam, but it represents a large collectivity of scholars whose research in sacred law and its ancillary disciplines has been characterized by considerable division of labor and specialization over very long periods of time. So, in other words, no, and they will state this explicitly, no single school, right? No single Sharia manual contains every aspect of Sharia law. For instance, if you want to know the detail of jihad, the detail of jizya, the details of dimitude, you go to the Hedaya, volume 2. That has incredible amounts of detail on that subject, and it is shocking. It's even horrifying what you will find there. The the Umdat al-Salik that we're looking at here, this has some detail, but however, you will notice that in all of these references, they will cross-reference to other scholars who are experts in a given vertical field, right? They will cross-reference to other books so that you gotta jump from this book to that book. So the Sharia is not contained in one book, and sometimes the top scholar in a given field is not from that school, so you've got to go to his book in a different school, and there is no problem doing that. That is very much allowed within Islamic law. And this is by design. Islam relies on security by obscurity. And yes, that it is by design, very much so. It's this crazy hyperlinking across different things. Yes, and that's why Western scholars have no idea what's going on. It's taken me years to figure this out, to understand this and find these books and read through them. Okay, so among the specialists in the field of hadith were Shafis, okay, who were Shafis as such as Bukhari, Muslim, and of course Bukhari Jesus. As you know, Bukhari made several miracles, right? There are actually references to miracles that Bukhari did. So he's Bukhari Jesus, but that's for another day. Um, so yeah, okay. Islam as a unified system of human life. So this is the system. So Deen effectively translates as a system. Islam is a system, right? So it's a set of rules and it binds you. So the classical texts have been checked and refined by a large number of scholars, and the difference is manifest. In other words, when some nobody, right, comes along and makes up his own set of rules, they find that one person doesn't know everything. But when you have this collective, as they mention, of these scholars, their rulings are sound. So there's no single work from any one of the schools that has everything, right? So the Umdat al-Salik is by no means the only thing in the present work, right? 3 introductory sections in the form of a user's guide to sacred law, personal ethics and character, Islamic spirituality, and tenets of faith. So this is a compendium of a number of different books, scholars, and views, right? Why do Muslims accuse everyone of lying? Well, they assume that we are lying, right? But that's another, and claim all apologetics are truth. Yeah, no, they're not. By default, they must lie. Now, notice they also include the Sufis. Many who are Sufis will have the strictest observance of the sacred law. To be a proper Sufi, you must be highly, highly strict about following Sharia law, right? To dominate the narrative. Yes. So these scholars, now these 4 scholars definitely. Now they speak of primary authors often merely state the ruling of an act, lawful or unlawful, leaving matters of definitions, conditions, and structural evidence for the commentator to supply. So there's actually this chain. So you'll have this So it goes from this guy to that guy to that guy to that guy. So if you want to get, so for instance, from the Quran to the Tafsir, from the Tafsir to the Shar, from the Shar, actually Quran to Hadith, Hadith to Tafsir, Tafsir to what they call the Shar, if I recall, the commentaries, right, which are commentaries on the Tafsir, and then you've got commentaries on the commentaries, and then you've got the top commentaries were collected, and then that ended up in the Sharia. So there's this whole chain, and you've got to go through the whole thing to really get the big picture, right? So the sheikhs form a second key resource of textual commentary, a spoken one parallel to the written. Like with the Talmud, they have the written law and the oral law. Okay, so and they do speak of copyists' mistakes. So apparently mistakes did happen. Right. So now the next page I need to go to. So I am currently on page. I need to keep track here. Um, okay, let me jump to page 14. So let me go here because we don't want to read 1,000 pages of this book. So now they talk of warrants of authenticity. Why this book is important. This is from the Institute of Islamic Thought, and this is written by the head of this institute, and he mentions this is a textbook for teaching Islamic jurisprudence to English speakers or as a legal reference for use by scholars, educated laymen, and students in this language, right? So in other words, they are endorsing this book, right? They've sent it to their guy who's the head of, he's a member of the Fiqh Council of North America and former chief of the Translation Bureau at the International Islamic University, Islamabad, blah, blah, blah. They talk about all this. This translation is superior to anything produced by Orientalists in the way of translations of major Islamic works, and it provides you with a sound understanding of Islamic law. And this is by this guy, president of the IIT, Islamic Fiqh Academy, member of the Islamic Fiqh Academy at Jeddah, and president of the Fiqh Council of North America. I assume he knows what he's talking about, right? Then we go on to Al Azhar, the oldest, most prestigious, most respected Islamic seminary in the world. They've got all four schools obviously represented there, so you can learn the law of each school, right? These are just minor variations. However, they also have the head of Al Azhar today is a Sufi, and the previous head was a Sufi, and they have all seven of the Sufi schools are represented at Al Azhar. So they teach Sufism as mainstream Islam. It is not a weird ass sect. It's mainstream. So we certified, and Al Azhar is also Barack Obama went and made his bows and kowtows to Al Azhar in Cairo when he was made president, right? So we certify that the above mentioned translation corresponds to the Arabic original and conforms to the practice and faith of the Orthodox Sunni community. There is no objection to printing and circulating it, and this is from the General Director of Research at Al Azhar University. So this thing is as legitimate as it gets. Shia and Ibadis have a very different adultery law. Yeah, certainly there are differences. Right now, let's go through some of the index. Okay, so we've got Al Azhar. Then we look at the bouquet contents. So they speak of the first chapter opens with the knowledge of good and bad, right? Where they tell us that good and bad is not what your morals tell you; it's what the Sharia tells you it is. That what you think is good may not be good, and what you think is bad may not be bad. So the meaning of good and bad, then hadith evidence, then communally obligatory knowledge they speak of. Okay, now let's go to page 19, 20. Okay, we are here. So it cannot be said, and I'll have to summarize, but it cannot be said that an act which the mind deems good is therefore good in the eyes of Allah. So you might think it's good. You might think rape is bad. But in Islam, as we know, rape is legal. Rape of women slaves is, or women captured in warfare is very much legal. Now, we might think it's bad. It's a crime against humanity, right? It's outlawed in the West. But, well, you might think it's bad, but, you know, you could be wrong because Allah thinks otherwise. Or that whatever the mind feels to be bad is thus bad in the eyes of Allah. The premise of this school of thought is that the lawgiver, synonymous with Allah or Muhammad. So in other words, Muhammad and Allah are partnered. You see, the lawgiver, the one who gives the law, as far as the Sharia is concerned, Allah and Muhammad are the same person. They speak with the same authority. So, has indicated is good by permitting it or asking it to be done. So, what is said to be good comes from the Quran. So, if the Quran allows you to diddle a 9-year-old, that's good. It is right. It is moral because, yeah, Allah or Muhammad allowed it. And the bad is what the lawgiver has indicated is bad by asking it not to be done. However, this is not just explicit, it's also implicit. The good is not what reason considers good. So there's no logos, nor the bad what reason considers bad. Again, a rejection of logos. Good and bad, according to the Sharia, is the sacred law, not reason. Not reason. Understand? They reject reason. Islam redefines good and bad to a faithful. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you just follow the rules. Okay, so that's yeah. So now we need to talk about these scholars. Okay, we're going to get to a point where we'll talk about the scholars and why the scholars are important. Why Muslims will always say, follow a scholar. Have you consulted a scholar? Have you consulted a scholar? Have you consulted a scholar? They used to say that a lot, so I went and consulted the scholars. I read their books, and then now they don't say that to me anymore. Now they say, you misunderstand. Okay, so now the superiority of sacred knowledge over devotion. So in other words, your basic followers are nowhere in the same league as those who are the people of knowledge. The ulama, right? That's your upper echelon of Muslims, your people of knowledge, right? The alim, Yasir Qadhi, right? The alim, even he speaks of the alim, the ulama, right? Someone of knowledge, the people of knowledge. The Taliban were the students, but they were people of knowledge. Um, not reason equals does not compute. Yeah. Now, understand the Quran 39:9 says, are those who know and those who do not know equal? And of course, the answer, that's a rhetorical question. No, those who do know, in other words, those who have the secret knowledge or the sacred knowledge, those are superior. So Allah raises those of you who believe and those who have been given knowledge whole degrees. So there are those who believe and those who have been given knowledge, but there are degrees of separation between them. The Prophet said, whoever Allah wishes well, He gives the knowledge of religion. Not just he becomes a Muslim, but he becomes one of the alim. He becomes an alim, right? Someone of knowledge. Notice what he said here in the Sharia. The superiority of the learned Muslim over the devotee is as my superiority over the least of you. So Muhammad apparently said, the learned Muslim, the scholar of Islam, is as superior over the lay Muslim, Abdul in the comment section, as Muhammad is over the least of Muslims. Muhammad is up there with the best of the best, apparently, right? And the lay Muslim is basically an earthworm. So the scholars are as superior over the lay Muslims as Muhammad is over the least of the Muslims. So that relied on reason. Yeah, the Mutazilites were wiped out because they're trying to use reason. Uh, yeah. So understand. So this is the importance of the scholars. According to the Sharia and according to Muhammad himself, the scholars are just highly superior over the lay Muslim. The superiority of the learned Muslim over the devotee is like the superiority of the moon over all the stars. The learned are the heirs of the prophets. The prophets have not bequeathed dinar nor dirham, but have only left sacred knowledge, and whoever takes it has an enormous share. So there is great stress placed on the importance of the scholars, and your average Muslim goes, well, that's not my scholar, or, because they're trying to deflect, because they know that the Sharia damns them, right? Because there is no escaping the Sharia. It's very, very clear. They can no longer dance around the Quran and the Hadith, all these abrogated verses. Yeah, comments. If they knew the difference between the moon and the stars, well, yeah, I guess the missiles and the thing that Muhammad broke into. Um, yeah, that's why they can't have nice things. They smash everything. So notice it says here, but very importantly, the scholars are the heirs of the prophets. Right, so the scholars are the heirs of the prophets and they revere the prophets. So the lay Muslim is meant to revere the scholars. Sacred knowledge, meaning the knowledge we're discussing, is a communal obligation. The communal obligation is superior to the personal obligation, right? So the knowledge of the scholars is superior to the basic adherence to Islam of the basic Muslim, right, of the lay Muslim, in that the person performing it fulfills the need of the Islamic nation. So in other words, they safeguard the integrity of the Islamic nation and lifts obligation from it. So they prevent sin from falling upon the nation because they are the small minority that fulfills devotions correctly, right? So the obligation of the individual is restricted to himself. So these people have a huge role to play within that. Yeah. So any questions from you guys? Yeah, Islam redefines everything. Now, know that what we have mentioned about the merit of seeking sacred knowledge only applies to the seeker who thereby intends Allah himself, not some end concerned with this world. Whoever seeks it for a worldly aim, for instance, defeating opponents in debate or similar motive, is blameworthy. So, for instance, what they're saying here, and there are three other aspects of this we'll get to, but those who learn the sacred knowledge of Islam, the Sharia, without becoming a Muslim, without wanting to get closer to Allah, are basically sinning. They are blameworthy, and it says later on they will go to hell for it. So basically, what I am doing is I am learning the sacred knowledge, not for the purpose of getting closer to Allah, but for defeating opponents in debate or a similar worldly motive. And I am blameworthy. I will go to hell. Understand? So verily, your Lord is ready at ambush. So Allah is ready at ambush because I am sinning. and those of you who do the same. So anyone who seeks sacred knowledge to argue or to vie with the scholars, see, now I'm vying with the scholars, or draw people's attention to himself will take a place in hell. Yeah, Meridia Kafir, I guess that's right. Okay, so now let me skip ahead. I need to get to page 27, so now I need to skip ahead to, now I'm going to go to page 397. Yeah, let me know if there's any questions I missed. Yeah, okay, so page 397, and we'll be talking about, okay, the prohibitions that protect the Sharia, right? Now, the buyer and the seller. Now, this is under the law of sales and contracts. Now, there are three pieces of legislation besides the one we've just seen that are important. Dejan, remember to clip when Muslim call and say we don't think, we turn off our brains, we just obey. Yeah. Well, if a Quran is being purchased for someone, it is obligatory that the person be Muslim. This is the rule in the Shafi school, and the same is true of books of hadith and books containing the words and deeds of the early Muslims. Quran, in this context, means any work that contains some of the Quran, even a slight amount. This ruling holds for any religious books, even the Tabaqat of Sharani. Interesting scholar, right? So understand that we are not meant, now they do mention some other things here, but we are not meant to know what is going on in Islam. This is actually illegal, right? So now let's have a look at another section. Let's jump to page 669, which is related to this. Now, the next section that is relevant here, so remember, they are not supposed to give us this knowledge. We are not meant to possess this knowledge, because it means that we are now learning their weaknesses, their secrets. Yes, we're going to hell for studying this. Agreed, KL. This is actually true. So spying on the Muslims and revealing their weaknesses. We are spying, right? We are actually spying on them. So now from that page, I need to go to page 716. Yeah, you're going to hell for being intelligent and informed. So let's have a look at spying on the Muslims and revealing their weaknesses. If someone's spying entails undermining Islam and its people, now, through me presenting this knowledge, we are undermining Islam. And we have to get to slander for that. You have to understand their definition of, their backwards definition of slander. But we are spying on, and we are revealing their weaknesses. We're revealing their secrets, their methodology, right? Their aims, their agenda is being exposed by doing this. So if we are spying and we undermine Islam, we are undermining Islam by doing this, right? That's why they take such offense. Then, right? Then he's one of those who strive for corruption in the land. And you know what happens to people who strive for corruption in the land. There was a journalist who was hanged in Iran recently. He was Iranian spy service tricked him into, he fled to France for safety. He was tricked into going to Iraq. He was kidnapped by the Iranians. David Wood spoke about it today, and he was hanged to death this week, I believe, and or last week, and for corruption in the land, and he is subject to death. Right. So we are revealing the secrets of I am, and this is the punishment. We fear that Allah could ever throws us. The dolt doesn't even know where the sun sets in his alleged creation. Exactly so. The underminers, yeah, so exactly. So understand now, they speak of tale-bearing. Make a note of this term because often they speak in code. Okay, tale-bearing is very closely allied to slander. In Western law, as I've mentioned to you guys before, slander is when we lie about someone and we defame them, we destroy their reputation, but we're lying. So therefore, they have legal recourse against us. In Islam, while slander does have that definition, there's an additional definition. It's when you say something that is 100% true and accurate, but this person doesn't want it to be revealed. So slander in Islam is also telling the truth that they don't want revealed. And that is a sin in Islam, right? So yeah, that is something that is against Islamic law. So now I'm going to go to page 762, right? So right, any questions from you guys? Because if you have any general questions, I can shift gears and go to something else if you have any questions. But I wanted to give you guys an overview of the Sharia and of Islam, right, for the next little while. Now they're speaking of this subject, giving directions to someone who wants to do wrong. Now, this could be directions to a house. It could be giving instruction, could be giving advice. They mean it in a different set of multiple connotations. But the wrong is already defined by Islam. This isn't right and wrong the way we perceive it as Westerners with our moral system or our legal system, right? This is what they consider to be wrong. So, for instance, if you want to go catch a jihadi who, according to Islam, is doing right, then you are wrong and you are striving for corruption, as they show here, right? Now, notice teaching sacred law to those learning it in bad faith is forbidden, right? Someone who does this, who teaches you sacred law, that's why you guys will know that, and many have seen this on Thaddeus' channel and others. I'll ask people, show me the Sharia, show me, prove me your case from the Sharia, show me the Islamic law. And they will never, ever, it has never happened. They will not ever discuss the Sharia with you, ever. It just doesn't happen because they know they're not allowed to. They would then be considered traitors to the Islamic nation. They're traitors. They would be subject to the death penalty if if that is actually imposed, right? If they have the chance to impose that. In the Islamic State under ISIS, that was the case. Under the Taliban, that was the case, right? Here, at least, Allah is going to punish you. You're going to hell for revealing the secrets of the Muslims, right? So, teaching sacred law to those learning it in bad faith, which is me, us, because we do not want the knowledge to apply it in our lives, but for some unworthy purpose, which is criticizing Islam. This is an unworthy purpose. Yeah. So, yeah, you work that out. You work that out. Now, also, if they teach us something, we could use it against them. So we are permitting or authorizing a person to do something that entails disobedience, right? So in other words, not allowing Islam to prosper is disobedience. We are preventing it, therefore we are disobedient. And if they helped us, they would then be assisting with that disobedience. And acceptance of disobedience is disobedience. And you know what Allah does, right? Because Islam's the religion of peace, they'll kill you for it. Which is why all these apologists are so happy to say, hey, my name is X and I live here and I live there and I work here because it's the religion of peace and no one's going to come and murder you, right? So Kale, yeah, Lloyd, they say Sharia doesn't exist today. What are the good responses? They're lying to you, obviously. Sharia very much exists. That's why you hear about Sharia courts all over the place, Germany, the UK, etc. Don't forget, Muslims have to implement as much of it as they can at any given time and place. So they start small. Don't forget, the full Sharia will only be implemented at the end times. Once Jesus comes back, kills the Christians, destroys the church, kills the pigs, abolishes the jizya, no more dhimmis, and then he then marries, dies, and worships Muhammad. Prays behind Muhammad. So until then, there will never be full Sharia. Even in Saudi Arabia, you don't have full Sharia. Where we saw full Sharia was under the Taliban, and we know how well that went, and under ISIS, and we also know how well that went. Right? They were following Azima, right, which is strict application of the Sharia. Right? The rest of the Muslims are following a doctrine called Rukhsa, right? Azima and Rukhsa. So strict Islam or dispensation, which is a looser form of it. Okay, so until they can, and both of these doctrines, both of these practices of Islam, both receive reward from Allah because they both are following doctrine. Right? I have chapters on Taqiyya, Kitman. Yes, I do. I'll get into that in a minute if you want. Okay, so understand they will only have full Sharia at the end times. At the moment, they've got to do the best they can. So, for instance, slavery has never been abolished in Islam. Cannot be because it's part of the Sharia. Now, we know that in 61, 63, and so on, even as late as the 80s in Aden, slavery was abolished because Western governments forced the Muslims to ban these practices. They still do happen, but they were effectively forced to ban these practices. So they are allowed to bend. Remember, Islam allows this. Rukhsa allows you to abandon tenets of Islam, tenets of the Sharia, right? To accommodate things. It's basically going along to getting along until you can implement them again fully. So there is this. And besides, Rukhsa basically then has underneath it, under this umbrella term of dispensation, you have all these forms of deceit and deception. Like you mentioned, Tawriya, Kitman, Darura, Taysir, all of these things that allow for either outright dishonesty or relaxation of the rules of the Sharia. Hopefully that answers your question, Kale. So yeah, Takia Kitman, yes, those. So true, in the city of Irving, Texas, the mayor of the city passed an ordinance that one, Muslims could conduct shadow courts of one city. Yes, exactly, that is what they do. Yeah, they could not conduct. Yeah, I remember that. Okay, so now we're on page. So, oh yeah, by the way, right after this section is the section on lying in Islam, and of course, guess which is the only religion that has a section called permissible lying. Actually, since I'm here, I may as well just read it. It was actually in the later section. I was going to jump to something else, but since I'm here. Now, uh, one thing full Sharia law at the end times is that a fantasy, faraway reality. Well, look, Islam, look, if you want to keep your civilization, you're going to have to fight for it one way or another because these people are not kidding. They're not playing around. They are deadly serious about making sure that this happens. Very, very serious. And so now, primary texts from the Quran and Sunnah say that it is unlawful to lie. Okay, fine and well, except let's look at permissible lying. The Prophet said, he who settles disagreements between people to bring about good or says something commendable is not a liar. So if you say something nice that's not true, you're not lying because you're bringing peace. So let's have an interfaith dialogue. We worship the same God. We worship the same Jesus. We love Jesus too. We should get along. You're settling a disagreement, you're preventing animosity, you're not lying. It's a complete and absolute, total and utter lie, but you're doing it for a good cause. So understand, this in Islam is not a lie. So they are not lying. When they say we're not lying, they're not lying. Goeienaand, Michiel de Vries, van der Vries. Goed om je hier te, ja. So yeah, goeienaand. So the unholy prophet is a great scientist among scientists. Yes, he is. So now understand this is, of course, Bukhari and Muslim they're quoting. And of course, the prophet did not permit untruth except for three things, right? War, settling disagreements, and a man talking with his wife. So it's okay to lie to your wife in Islam. It's okay, right? Now, except for three things. War. Now, Islam is in permanent state of war with the rest of the world. Islam divides the world into two, right? You have the Dar al-Islam, the house or the abode of Islam, which are the Islamic countries. And then, of course, you have the Dar al-Harb, the house of war. We live in the house of war. We must be made war upon. Islam has bloody borders, as the famous saying goes. So yes, so therefore, Islam is always at war. Therefore, Islam will always lie. It has to lie. It's compulsory. And notice it says permissible lying. So this is an explicit statement that lying is sometimes permissible for a given interest. It is lawful to lie. The best analysis is by Ghazali. Ghazali is the number one Muslim after Muhammad himself. He is the most respected Islamic scholar after Muhammad himself. So he says, speaking is a means to achieve objectives. If a praiseworthy aim is attainable through both telling the truth and lying, it is unlawful to accomplish through lying because there's no need. So if you don't have to lie, don't lie. However, when it is possible to achieve such an aim by lying, but not by telling the truth, it is permissible to lie if attaining the goal is permissible. Permissible is a legal term. Understand, these are not just random choices of words. These words have meaning, specific legal meaning in Islam. Is it permissible to make Islam the religion of the whole world? Of course. Is it permissible to make Allah the only worshipped deity? Of course it is. There are no circumstances where it's not permissible. So therefore, it is always permissible to lie to you. Zach Matthews, you can counter that with Quran, all food is halal. Well, yeah, I mean, all food's halal if need be. So understand, so Islam has permissible lying. Now, Islam, of course, Islamic legal doctrine, its jurisprudence, is based on a concept called hiyal, Hiyal. I have a video on that. Check my channel. Hiyal is called legal trickery. It is legal devices designed to obey the letter of the law, but violate them. Okay, so you can break every law every legal code, every tenet of Islam from the Sharia, the fiqh, written laws, contracts. Hiyal was defined in by 805, the first books had already been written on how to break every single promise, every single oath, every single contract, every single Islamic ruling, every single law of Allah, every single rule in Islam can be broken. Hiyal is the method to do that. Okay? Nothing is sacred in Islam. They can break literally everything, and yet on the one hand they're still obeying the letter but violating the spirit. So yeah, once they have the upper hand, heads will roll, and that is true. Okay, so notice it is not unlawful to lie when any of these aims can only be attained through lying. Thought you might find that fascinatingly interesting. It is not unlawful to lie, it is not a sin to lie when you can achieve the dominance, the superiority of Islam through lying. Yes, what a disgusting cult. I fully agree with you there. And don't forget, we're all ex-Muslims. We're born Muslims, right? Your soul is born Muslim. Your parents corrupted you, whatever. It is religiously more precautionary in all such cases to employ words that give a misleading impression. Now, understand, they're teaching them here to lie. It is religiously more precautionary not to lie outright, not to lie blatantly to your face, but use words that are ambiguous, misleading. Tauria, Mr. Yasir Qadhi and his little Tauria, Kitman, Taysir, Darura, all of these other forms, Hiyal, all these other forms of deception. I mean, just like Eskimos have like 20 words for snow, Islam is like a dozen words for lying. So yeah, you work it out. Okay, I'll move on from this point because I jumped into a section I wasn't planning to do right this moment. Traditions protecting the Sharia. We've seen a little bit about their knowledge of good and bad, how they define this. If you guys have any questions, throw it out. I know I'm talking really fast. Okay, you know what? Let me go into that section on lying. I will go find that section in a moment and I will bring this up. Yes, you are correct. Let's have a quick discussion on that subject. It's worth actually exploring that. So I'm going to go here now and I'll do a brief overview of that. So let me take away my notepad. Let me take away that one. Acrobat, let me bring up OneNote. Ah, there we go. Awesome. This little tablet thing works great. Okay, so let's do a quick discussion on the Islamic doctrines of deceit. Now, these are doctrines, they're not just words. In other words, they are rules defining them. They are found by doing a thorough exegesis of what happens in the Quran, what Muhammad does, what his companions do, what happens in the Hadith, and all the scholars' interpretations of these events are brought into a doctrine. So they'll say, well, under these conditions, these circumstances, this happened, that happened. And they start to write out rules, and these rules become a doctrine, right? So under these conditions, you have this, and they have all these subtleties that define all these things. So the Islamic doctrines of deceit. You have taqiyya, and Sunnis will always tell you, yeah, but it's Shia, right? Yeah, they're actual legal concepts, correct. Yeah, they're actual legal concepts. Exactly. These doctrines are all legal. Everything in Islam is a legal concept. So taqiyya is technically a Shia concept. However, the same word has made its way into Sunni beliefs, right? And Sunni practice. However, it actually has a name in the Shia, in the Sunni world called mudarat. So taqiyya just happens to be called mudarat in the Sunni world. So yeah, it's there you go. It's taqiyya, just under a different name. Although the Sunni scholars do actually use the word mudarat. It is calculated deceit for the purposes of spreading Islam. And of course, we know that it is legal to do so if it's going to benefit Islam. Kitman, deceit by silence or omission, lying by omission. An example would be when, let me just open that, when Muslims will quote only a fragment of the verse 532, right? So that if anyone kills, it shall be as if he had killed all mankind. Of course, we know we ordained for the children of Israel, in other words, for the Jews, right? So this is actually taken from the Mishnah Sanhedrin from the Talmud. This is actually a line misquoted from the Talmud. It's not an Islamic line. It's meant specifically, right? And it's taken, it says that if a man kills a man, he may have killed all of his offspring, all of his following on ancestors, and thus you've killed the whole world, right? So this is a regulation, a law imposed purely upon the Jews, right? Of course, if you read 533, they say that for corruption in the land, Muslims are to crucify you, to cut off your hands and feet from opposite sides, right? So there is a very big difference there that they don't mention. So they neglect to mention the rest of the verse and the next mandate murder in undefined cases of corruption and mischief. Corruption just means temptation away from Islam. Can you send the document online? Yeah. So look in the description box. Download the Reliance of the Traveler. Go through that section on permissible lying. You'll find it in the index. And then I will post this. I'll send this link to this document later. Then we have tauria, deceit by ambiguity, lying by omission. Right. So deceit by ambiguity. For instance, is your mom here? Right. So your mom's in the house. She doesn't want to speak to the salesman. She sends you to the door and you say, no, she's not here, meaning she's not here, like with us right now. She's in the bedroom. She's in the garden. She's in the kitchen, but she's not here. You're not lying technically. Right. So check in the description, Hope Faith, for Reliance of the Traveler. Right. So that's tauria, deceit by ambiguity. Okay. Taysir is deceit through facilitation. So you don't have to observe all the tenets of the Sharia. We would also know this as rukhsa. right? That is azima, strict interpretation, or the rather strict application, strict following of Islamic law versus a loose relaxation of it. Darura, deceit through necessity. So you can engage in things that are haram or forbidden, out of necessity, going along to get along, right? Then you have muruna blending in, the temporary suspension of Sharia, in order that Muslim immigrants, for instance, appear moderate, right? So you temporarily go along with things. Because remember, we are the enemy and they're just trying to survive, right? And hiyal is contortion, contrivance, device, subterfuge, basically legalistic trickery in Islamic jurisprudence. It allows the breaking of oaths, promises, contracts, and all Sharia law. Let me actually go down further. There should be something on this page that will be of interest to us. Um, Open-ended death sentence. Yeah, so it is. Islam is guerrilla warfare. So let's have a look at the word makr, because remember, Allah is so. And they, the disbelievers, schemed, and Allah schemed against them, and Allah is the best of schemers. The Arabic used here for scheme or plot is makara, which literally means deceit. So if it means deceit, why are they using scheme and plot and plan? So Allah is deceitful towards unbelievers, right? So there's little basis for denying that Muslims are allowed to do the same, right? So now let's have a look at the term makra. Are they then secure from Allah's deception? Makra Allahi. None deemeth himself secure from Allah's deception, save folk that perish. In other words, Allah's going to get you. Don't think you're safe from Allah. Remember, He is always lying in ambush. We saw that above. So they schemed a scheme and we schemed a scheme. وَمَكَرُوا مَكْرًا وَمَكَرْنَا مَكْرًا, whatever. I probably butchered that. While they perceived not. That's Quran 2750 and Quran 799. Now let's have a look. Let's go to some academic resources and texts. So we have makr, okay? So this is the term here from an Arabic dictionary, okay? He practiced deceit, circumvention. He practiced deceit, guile, circumvention, desiring to do another a foul, an abominable, an evil action, clandestinely without his knowing. So that sounds like a James Bond villain, not a god of the world, right? But I mean, here you're looking at Hannibal Lecter or some kind of psychopath who wants to do you a foul, evil deed, right? Allah can do evil because Allah is will. He's not logos. God, our God, cannot do contradictories, cannot lie because he's truth, cannot do evil because he's good. Allah can do evil. End time doesn't really matter whether Allah deceives us. It all makes the. Yeah. So let's have a look at other dictionaries. Okay, so here we have the very same deceit, right? Let's have a look at the this dictionary: deceived, wronged, defrauded, cheated, right? For makr, right? Misled, puzzled, misinformed, right? And of course, the context here is prevented you through deceit, stop you from doing something through deceit, right? He concealeth a thing that he knew. So he concealed and then he told you something different. So he hid information and he narrated something different. In other words, he lied to you. They just don't come out and say it. He expressed to him the news or information obscurely, enigmatically, or obscured it to him. He concealed it from him, yet to lie. Let's have a look at this one here. Allied, leagued himself, conspired with. So to conspire against someone, right? They conspired. Allah conspired. And of course, they have this interesting connotation here: was tied, bound, made fast. One ring to bind them. Yeah. Cord, rope, bandage, tether, band. The thing which one ties, binds, or makes fast. So one ring to bind them. And of course, someone mentioned food earlier in on Malik, book 21, hadith 16. I do not see that there's any harm in the Muslims eating whatever food they come across in enemy territory. So yeah, they can eat whatever the heck. That's just one example. And of course, the Prophet said war is deceit. If you read some of the older texts, it says war is a game of deceit, right? So in some of the older texts, it says Muhammad says war is a game of deceit. Let me pause here and we close that. Okay, so back to open up this, close OneNote. Okay, so guys, any questions so far? Are you guys learning something new, something interesting and useful here? Um, So let me continue the validity of following. Okay, so page 645. A codec mana. Yeah. Right. So I need to mention the different kinds of hadith. As we know, I've done shows on that as well, gone into detail on some of these. And people will say, well, that's a kharib hadith, blah, blah, blah. So it doesn't blah, blah, whatever, nonsense. So what we know from the scholars is they say that these designations do not directly influence the authenticity rating of the hadith. To say, but that hadith is aziz, it's kharib, it's rare, whatever, it means nothing. It does not, according to the Sharia, according to the top scholars that apparently are as the moon above the stars, as the sun above the earth, as Allah above Muhammad, and Muhammad above the ant. The scholars say that the lay Muslims, well, look, sorry, you're talking out of your backside because these designations do not affect the authenticity of the hadith. For example, a singular hadith, a rare hadith, in other words, like one chain of transmission. Allah is Lord Sauron. Yes, he is. Michael van der Vlies. Yes, he is. So a single hadith, for example, might be rigorously authenticated, may well be sahih. Understand? They need to prove to you their case from the Sharia, and it says bluntly, a hadith with a single chain of transmission, one, is sahih, right? Hadiths of both types, that's Hassan, being obligatory for a Muslim to believe in. Well, hey, you're supposed to believe it. If Moses chased a rock and beat it because it stole his clothing, well, hey, that happened. So, although it does say someone who denies them is merely considered corrupt, fasik, and not an unbeliever or kafir. Right, let's, yeah. So let me go back to following Muhammad. Okay, page 718. Okay, 718 and 719. So, not loving the Prophet more than all people. So you will love the Lord your God with all your heart. Sorry, you will love the Lord Muhammad with all your heart and all your mind and all your strength. And it says so right here because if you don't, Allah doesn't listen to your prayers. If you do not believe in Muhammad, if you say the Shahada just for Allah, the one that's in the Shahada in the Quran only references Allah, not Muhammad. If you say that Shahada and believe in Allah, Allah doesn't care because you didn't accept Muhammad. Unless you pray to, sorry, we don't pray to Muhammad, of course not. Unless you accept Muhammad as your Lord and Savior, Allah doesn't listen to your prayers. Okay? Thank you very much, Entime. Appreciate it. How can you not continue following this faith knowing well? Yeah, I have no idea. Coco, I have no idea. So the Prophet said, none of you believes, you're not a believer, you're not a Muslim, until I, Muhammad, am more beloved to him than his wife, child, self, and all people. You need to love Muhammad more than everything. I don't think the Jews are supposed to love Moses more than anything in their life, but Muslims have to put Muhammad first above their own lives, family, children, even their life. Kirmani says love of the Prophet means the will to obey him and not disobey him, this being one of the obligations of Islam. The Prophet said, none of you believes until his inclinations conform to what I have brought. This means a person must examine his acts in light of the Quran and Sunnah, suspending his own inclinations, his own thoughts, and following what the Prophet has brought. Okay? This hadith resembles the word of Allah when Allah and His Messenger have decided a matter. No believer, male or female, has a choice in the affair. Now, when they say following, that's a code word. That's another code word. Right? That code word is taqlid. Right? Means following. So Muslims are supposed to follow a superior scholar. Doesn't the Quran say, yes, you have to obey Muhammad? Only Allah prays for Muhammad. That is what exactly. Yes, Allah and the angels pray for Muhammad. Now, okay, we're not going to go into that page. I need to go now to the validity of following qualified scholarship, 698. 640. Okay, hang on, let me just double check here, make sure that I haven't missed something. Cursing a believer. Oh, by the way, just an interesting point. Cursing a believer, cursing a Muslim is like killing him. It's an offense, right? And of course, this falls under a doctrine called Sab al-Rasul, right? Sab, which means technically insulting the Prophet, but really means insulting Islam, insulting Allah, Muhammad, or even Muslims or the companions. the penalty, whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim, a believer or not, and if you insult Islam, Muhammad, Allah, the penalty is death, right? Kodik Mana, less than 5 minutes in, and I'm learning things I've never heard of. Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, Sharia defines Islam to a T. Sharia is Islam. It clarifies everything. It disambiguates everything. It rips the veil of confusion off. Question: did Muslims pray to Muhammad 2 times per day when they directly talk to him? You know what? Weirdly enough, I'm not that familiar with Islamic theology. Oddly enough, I mean, I know a fair amount, but yeah, I don't actually follow their actual theological practice because I don't care. Because I don't care whether they think Allah is a white guy or a pink guy. I don't care. That doesn't. They're not going to kill me for that. Right. I worry more about their political, military, and other issues. That's the concern for me. But technically, I think that would be true if I do recall what I have, and I did some time ago look into that. I think so, yeah. So anyway, so 698, I need to just make sure that I'm following along because I'm losing my place. So now we saw earlier the validity of following qualified scholarship, right? Now, in line with that subject of following the scholars, do they pray 5 times per day? Well, some verses say three, right? So there's this potential confusion, but the thing is they all pray 5 times a day. That's the accepted norm, right? So those Muslims who say, well, it's actually 3 times, they just want to confuse the issue because they don't want to they don't want to grant you any victories, right? So they want to confuse the issue. They're just muddying the waters. They're just being, well, they're lying to you, right? So the love for Muhammad is absurd. I know you have to love Muhammad. That's worship, isn't it? So leaving one's leader. Now, this relates again to what I said was the validity of following the qualified scholars that I went through earlier. The Prophet said, he who obeys me obeys Allah. So if you obey Muhammad, you obey Allah, right? So Muhammad is effectively Allah. And like I said, no one goes to Allah except through me. You will love Muhammad, your God, with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your money, more than your family, more than your mother, more than your wife, more than your kids. And no one goes to Allah except through Mo. Understand, they've made this very, very clear here. Moses should not have intervened and whittled it down from 50 times. He should have made it like 500. Would have kept them a little busy, but yeah. So Muhammad says, he who obeys me obeys Allah, and he who disobeys me disobeys Allah. So if you don't have lots of dried semen on your clothing for Aisha to scrape off with her fingernails, well, then you are not obeying Muhammad now, are you? So he who obeys the leader obeys me. But notice this, he who obeys the leader obeys me. And he who disobeys the leader disobeys me. So if you as a Muslim, a good lay Muslim, you know, someone practicing taqlid or following, right, then you got to follow the leader, right? You got to follow the example of your imam, follow the example of whoever's in charge, right? If you disobey the leader, you are disobeying Muhammad's direct words. The leader is the caliph or an authorized representative. Whenever there's a group of 3 or more Muslims, it is sunnah for a leader, an amir, to be chosen. Very interesting point, just a point of interest. But the imam is that leader. Generally speaking, the imam is that leader. And if they disobey, that's that. Ibadis don't accept taqlid. True, but there's a second concept, not taqlid. There's another one, very, very similar to taqlid. Um, yeah, there's another concept they do accept, and it's not taqlid, it's a different word, but they do accept it. Actually, I will look it up right now while I'm here. Let me just search for it, and then we can move on. No, come on. Of course, this is they spell things differently in this reference. Okay, so let this thing. Oh, come on, don't give me a hard time with this, because then we're gonna start taqlid. Oh, by the way, yeah, taqlid is the unquestioning acceptance of the doctrines of established schools and authorities, right? Unquestioning obedience to the doctrines of established. There is another form of obedience. It's not called taqlid. It has a different name. I just wasn't thinking of it right now, but yeah. Dejan is 5 times, but they can pray more per Quran. They supposedly pray 3 times like Jews, but in Moses in Jannah with, yeah, okay. Can we Christians use Takir, for example, if we love Momo? um, you, yeah, the thing is, if you lie about it, I don't know, that they're probably not going to be, you're probably lying, so you're probably blaspheming. So, okay, so yeah, next point. So, obligatory, so meaning of knowledge, 647. I think I've done that. Okay, no, 647. I think it's very important to look at this. And then I'm going to wrap up. So now, again, we're going back to the idea of the scholars, the validity of following qualified scholarship and how important these scholars are. that you must obey them. Muslims will lie to you whole day, every day for free. Understand that. They have no choice. This teaches them that. Now, notice they speak of that the meaning of knowledge of the above matters is, for example, now let's talk in terms of a Muslim Qadhi, a judge. Yes, the Qadhi is a judge, an Islamic judge who's allowed to give decrees. That's what Qadhi means, is to know part of what is connected with the Quran and the Sunnah. So if you want to give judgments, you have to know the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay, they don't mean you have to necessarily know everything, because only at a certain level do you have to know that much knowledge, right? But familiarity with the rules of the Sunnah, comprehensive mastery of the rules of analogical reasoning, but you need to know what is pertinent for giving judgments in court. So for a Qadi, a judge, he needs to know what is pertinent from the Quran and the Sunnah for what is pertinent to giving judgments in court. However, now the four Imams, they say here very bluntly, the four Imams, that's Hanafi, Hanbali, Shafi, Maliki, these are absolute experts in Islamic legal reasoning. These are mujtahid mutlaq. So they're saying that the founders of the four schools are absolute masters of the Sharia, absolute masters of the fiqh, of Islamic law, right? Such as Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi, or Ahmad. And they're obliged to know what relates to every subject matter in sacred law. So John Q. Muslim in the comments, right? John Q. Abful or Abdul or whatever his name is, he's not entitled to say a damn thing. He doesn't know what's going on. He has to listen to his scholars. And these scholars overrule him at any turn, right? So the top scholars must know the reliability ratings of hadith narrators in strength and weakness. When two primary texts seem to contend, he gives preference to, and there are rules about which one takes over from which one takes over from which one. But the four scholars, the heads of the four schools, are absolute masters of Islamic law, and therefore they are prime, they're supreme. They have to listen to them. Okay, so now let's go to 647. I think we've done 647. Now, the master of Islam, right, your top scholar, must also have knowledge of the Arabic language. So they always say, well, you don't know Arabic. Well, they aren't required to know Arabic either, oddly enough. 85% of the world's Muslims speak no Arabic. They speak other languages, right? So, but 10, maybe 15% of the world's Muslims are Arabs, right? So now he must have knowledge of Arabic, its lexicon, grammar, word morphology, and rhetoric. Well, there are things called dictionaries these days. You must likewise know the positions of the scholars of sacred law regarding their consensus and differences, and not contradict their consensus. The consensus is the primary ruling within Islam, right? There's the ijma. Religion of robots, we hear and we obey exactly. Every aspect of the faith practices are robotic. Yeah, comply, don't question. You come to the red line and walk back, exactly. So understand so this level of knowledge is only for the top scholars, and we can read their writings. It's not hard. We can just pick up the book and read it. Someone who is incapable of independent legal reasoning, that doesn't mean that your brain fell out and you can't think, but the average lay Muslim is not capable of independent legal reasoning. He doesn't have the authority, and therefore he merely follows. In other words, taqlid. That is his role, to follow and obey. This is the way Islam works. Right? This is the way Islam works. Okay, so let's head to slander. That's like the next section, and we're basically finishing up. So we're back to slander, back to this. Slander. Okay? He who stirs up hatred among people by quoting their words to each other will not enter paradise. Now, notice we are always told enmity means hatred. Okay? Enmity is hatred. Right? Now notice Muslims will always tell you, why are you spreading hate? They'll always say that they follow tradition. They all follow tradition. Why are you spreading hate? They'll ask you, right? They'll ask me, they probably asked you many times, why are you spreading hate? When you literally convey the words of Islam, when you literally read the Hadith or the Quran or other sources to them, they'll say, why are you spreading hate? Because it says in the Sharia, the Prophet said, he who stirs up hatred among people by quoting their words to each other will not enter paradise. You will go to hell for saying exactly what Islam said, for quoting the precise words of Muhammad, for quoting the precise words of the companions, for quoting the precise words of the law of Islam, of the top scholars of Islam. This creates hatred. If these words are hateful, and you want to bring attention to them because they are of concern, well, you are creating hatred. This is why they say it. It's part of the Sharia. Everything they do, whether implicit or explicit, is guided by the Sharia. Understand, everything they say, they are clones. Talk about the clone wars. These people are clones. Understand? You got to feel sorry for them in one sense, except though, of course, they'll murder. Well, I mean, there are a few of them will anyway. We know that, right? So that's a real concern. Right? These people are clones. They're obliged to simply obey. Islamic slander is basically a hatred gossip. Yeah, just want you to come close. That's pure evil. What a disgusting cop. Yeah, I say that every day. Okay, so understand, when you say what someone said and they don't like it, then you are spreading hatred. That's why they say this. And let's go to the last bit about slander. Page 750, I think it is, the ruling on slander. Uh, okay, so let's just go here. The Muslim is the brother of the Muslim. That's why they also will never attack each other, even if they're wrong, in the comment section. He does not betray him, lie to him, or hang back from coming to his aid. Right? To basically say something bad about another Muslim in the comment section, even if they're wrong, is backbiting. This is something that they're told absolutely not to do. When the person, okay, so let's go up here. I think slander, tailbearing, slander. It's up here. I missed the page. Okay, just to define this, slander called khiba. Slander means to mention anything concerning a person that he would dislike. Not that's false, not that's untrue, but that he wouldn't like you to say. For instance, they wouldn't like you to say that Muhammad came over his clothes all the time and a 6-year-old Aisha had to scrape dried semen off his clothes with her fingernails. They don't want you to say that. That's slander. Why are you spreading such hate? Do you understand? Everything. You seriously take the Quran, throw it outside into the preferably in the sewage, right? Toss it into a drain, forget about it. It's not important. Throw it away. You don't need the Quran. It's a confusing mess that they use to confuse you. You need to read the Sharia. This is where the facts of Islam are to be found. Forget the Hadith. Don't forget, most of the Quran is abrogated. The Hadith are abrogated. You don't know which ones are abrogated. You don't know, and they don't tell you. But the ones that are valid, the verses of the Quran that are valid, and the verses of the Hadith that are valid are found in the Sharia. Those are the only ones that have any relevance or any validity. Understand? Unless they're using something that's abrogated simply to deceive you right now. But wait till Sharia gets enforced, man. Ask any French school teacher. Okay? So, the ultimate narcissist guide. So, yes, I agree. So yeah, slander, you hurt my feelings. DHC, yes, that's a very good way of putting it. So understand, slander is not, everything they do is guided by the Sharia, by Islamic law. Islamic law is the final interpretation of the Quran. It's the final application. Forget the Quran. I mean, seriously, just forget that book. Don't even look at it. It's not worth it. Read the Sharia. Let the Sharia tell you when the Quran is relevant. Let the Sharia tell you when the Hadith is relevant. Yeah. So, okay, guys, I'll do one last quote here, 701. I hope this has been instructive and useful to you guys. So let's have a look at making pictures. Making pictures. Yeah. Oopsie. Every maker of pictures will go to hell, where a being will be set upon him for each picture he made to torment him in hell. So, yeah. Ever drawn any photos? I mean, drawn any pictures? Well, if you drew 50 of them, hey, you're going to get 50 demons. Awesome, good stuff. Draw one of Muhammad and a guy will come in with an AK-47 and shoot you, as we all know. Yeah, so guys, I'll call it here. It's been an hour and 13 minutes. Quran has historical significance, so you can see how Islam developed gradually coming up. Yeah, but you can read that much better in a scholarly book. Understand? But when you read the Quran, you don't understand it the way the scholars do. The lay Muslim, remember, he's at the lowest possible level of Islam. You are even lower than he is, right? And they will lie to you whole day, every day, for free, right? You need to elevate yourself from the ibadah to the ishara to the lataif to the haqqaiq. You need to be looking from the top the way the scholars look down. You need to look at Islam through their lens. You need to read. No scholar grabs a book of hadith and reads Bukhari. No scholar does that. The scholars go to the tafsir of Bukhari. They go to the tafsir of the hadith. They go grab Askalani when they want to read Bukhari. What does Askalani say Bukhari said? Not what did Bukhari say. What did Askalani say Bukhari said? Do you understand? We think we're being clever. No, we're being stupid. Okay? We're being basic lay Muslims. In fact, even more so, because we're less aware of these traditions. Muslims use slander on everything. I once had a Muslim boss, he got a bad review on Google, and his answer was that, yes, of course, because it was true. They said something about him he was embarrassed by. Not because it was wrong, not because it was a lie, but because he didn't want it said. Therefore, it's slander. Is that, yeah, camera pictures, hey, I don't know. I don't think, who knows? Maybe in the modern world, but yeah. Seriously, guys, look, the Quran's important to lay Muslims because we had Jesus, right? You had God on earth, right? God loves you, right? He's a father to you, right? Islam doesn't have that concept. They don't have that. And the closest aspect they have to the divine on earth is the Quran. God's presence, Allah's presence on earth is the Quran. That's why it's important to them, right? Most of them have no idea what's really in it. They have no idea of abrogation. They'll lie to you all day about that too, right? Or they just simply are ignorant about those things. It's very hard to tell which. But understand, you can see that the Sharia guides their behavior. You can tie all of this that I've told you to their behavior. So hopefully that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, guys, any questions? According to all that I hear, the only real Muslims to meet till today in Afghanistan, yeah, probably. The Taliban were very, very authentic. So was ISIS, right? ISIS was 100% following the Sharia. I mean, for instance, if you miss a prayer, you're supposed to be killed, right? If you miss a prayer in Islam, they're supposed to, without you miss a prayer, they're supposed to come to your house, take you, chop off your head, no question, no discussion, just do it and bury you, and that's it. And that's what ISIS did. And that's Islam. That is Islam. So that's once the Sharia is fully implemented, that's what you're going to get. And you're seeing little bits of it as much as they can. And there are rules and rules and thousands of rules. It's insane. Guys, any questions? Because then I'll start wrapping up. But hopefully that taught you lots of interesting things and you gained a lot out of it. Um, yeah, so don't say what Muhammad said because that's hatred. Okay? Don't say what Mo said. That is hatred. Because when you create conflict by saying what someone actually said, that's hatred. I thought that's just reporting the facts, but no, it's not. The facts are haram in Islam. So yeah, guys, anything from you? Scared it'll come to South Africa too. Last week, 50 people got buried in Mozambique. Yeah, it's very much in South Africa. If you look like, I mean, I live in Cape Town, right? I own property in Cape Town, and if you look at certain areas like Kenilworth Centre, right, you'll see that's their favorite little haunt for shopping, and you can see the growth because the money is starting to flow in. The Muslim community has become wealthy enough and large enough, so now the money is flowing in, and in this case from Pakistan. So you're looking at Deobandis. Now, don't forget the Deobandis. 60%, 70% of the mosques in the UK are Deobandi mosques. Who are the Deobandis, you asked? Well, I'm so glad you asked. The Deobandis are known as the Taliban, right? So we are getting Taliban money coming in, and people are teaching Deobandi ideology in South Africa. It's great. We're getting the Taliban. Cheers. I'm so excited for the future. Yes. So yeah, yeah. I spent 11 years in the Middle East. It's a mess. Good grief. Stories I can tell you. Um, yeah. So guys, any last comments? Then I'll call it a day here. I hope to do more of these. I know I spoke a lot, but you were welcome to ask questions as much as you wanted. Let me just go here. Yeah, you were welcome to ask as many questions as you want. TRB Graphics, hi there, welcome. Um, yeah, so I'll give it another minute in case anyone has any thoughts. Or thank you very much. Yeah, guys. So do me a favor, tell people about this. Look, I understand it's controversial when I say ignore the Quran, but really, you do need to. You do need to. You need to start learning the Sharia. The Quran is it's just secondary to the Sharia. My idea of Sharia is just another component. Didn't know Sharia is what defines Islam. It is the final interpretation of Islam. It is the final authority. It is the final authority over everything. So yes, please do not misunderstand. And I say this without hoping not to cause animosity with anyone or cause friction, but Islamic apologists, Western academics are negligent in studying the Sharia. They are entirely negligent. They'll say the word Sharia. They think the Sharia just means what the Quran says. No, it does not. It's not just that. Okay? Ignore the Quran, look at the Sharia to learn the truth about Islam. Yeah, Islam is not the rule of law, it's the law of rules. Um, that's a fairly good point. Yeah, very much. Islam is not the rule of law, it's the rule of rules. It's an insane number of rules. You bought the Reliance of the Traveler hard copy. Also, we need a bigger platform. So please, guys, share it out. Let people know. This is very important, and I'll try and do more of these. Next week, I'm going to be talking about Fort Hood, about Major um, Malik Hassan, I think his name was, if I recall, the guy that killed 13 people and wounded 32 at Fort Hood. I will not be talking about the actions that happened at Fort Hood, but I will be talking about. Let me actually just. But I will be talking about his theology, about his beliefs. Let me actually just go to that. The Quranic worldview as it relates to Muslims in the US military, Major Nidal Malik Hassan, he wrote a rather interesting presentation which he gave to the military. He actually gave it to leaders in the army before he committed the atrocity, before he massacred those people. And he explains all of his ideas right here. And this is something worth discussing next week, and I'll be going through that. Zach Matthews, why the Sunnis don't? Sorry. If Sharia law was only a personal set of laws and ethics, would it then be less harmful? Except it's not. It is the Coco, the Sharia law is personal, but see, Islam has two kinds of obligations: fard al-ain, personal obligation, like praying 5 times a day, as also fard kifaya, which is communal obligation that falls upon all of the ummah, the entirety of Muslims. And if they don't perform these things, like jihad has to be done like once or twice a year. If this does not happen, then the sin and the crime of non-performance falls upon the entire Islamic community, and Allah will be angry with them, and they can lose paradise. So they have to do it. A small minority has to then follow Islam according to the doctrine of Azima strictly. So it's not just a personal set of laws. Islam has to be destroyed. It is not to be entertained. It is not to be modified. It cannot be modified. It's not possible. And there is no separation of mosque and state. There is no political Islam. I understand, yes, you can define this as, but Islam itself makes no divisions. Islam does not call itself religion. It's a deen. And I showed you in the beginning what a deen is. Is the Sunni Sharia different from the Shia? Not by a whole lot. It's pretty much the same thing. I wouldn't cast too many differences between them. It's like, you know, it's they're pretty much the same. There's not enough difference to make it difference. Yeah, guys. So do share it. Thank you very much. I need to. Yeah, both are equally legal. You should actually read the Constitution of the Republic of Iran. Read just the opening chapter of the. Actually, hold on. Let me try and find this for you guys. I closed this, so let me see if I can actually find it. Iran. Before I go, because man, I could be a whole day talking about stuff. But let me do this. Let me just go here. Go here. Oh, here we go. This is the opening to the Constitution of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Notice it's not the Christian Republic, it's not the Buddhist Republic, and those are not real Muslims. It's the Islamic Republic of Iran. The opening chapter in their constitution says a religious army. In the formation, sorry, I'm just getting rid of that notepad. In the formation and equipping of the country's defense forces, attention must be paid to faith and ideology as basic criteria. According to the Army of Iran and the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, they are to be organized in conformity with this goal, and they will be responsible not only for guarding and preserving the frontiers of Iran, but fulfilling the ideological mission of jihad in Allah's way. In other words, exporting the Islamic revolution through the entire world into the Dar al-Harb. That is extending the sovereignty of Allah's law throughout the world in accordance with the Quranic verse. Prepare against them whatever force you can muster. Strings of horses, striking fear into the enemy of Allah and your enemy and others besides them. So they are to use terror to spread Sharia throughout the entire world. Sounds like a friendly form of Sharia compared to the Sunni one. Not. So guys, Yeah, like thank someone just tipped me $10. Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it. I'm trying to save up, in this case, $300 now to buy a new editing package, as I said, so I don't have to pay for a subscription, so I can just buy it once off and it updates whenever a new version comes out. So, but yeah, guys, thank you very much. I need to end this and get some dinner. Thank you very much for your time. I will see you guys tomorrow. I should be on with Thaddeus at Reasoned Answers Apologetics. We'll be doing a discussion on abrogation from Yasir Qadhi's book. I did it on my channel, but I'll be discussing that with him. And I will thank you very much, Kodak. Much appreciated. And yeah, I appreciate the support. This does take hours and hours of work. Believe me, I put in several hours of research work into everything that I do. And yeah, I will see you guys. I'll see you guys soon, right? So yeah, till next time, guys. Now I got to figure out how to stop the stream because I'm still not that good. Um, I'll stop streaming here. Okay, good night, guys. Have a great day tomorrow. See you.